clearly have nerves of steel, young man. But I'd say you still have much to learn about the world.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to a brand new podcast here on the Geek News RSS feed. Welcome to Geek News Marathon Night, formerly known as the G Gundam Podcast. If you guys enjoyed those episodes, well, this is the continuation of it, because, first of all, I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac, and joining me today is my lovely wife, Andrea. How you doing, Andrea?
I'm doing fine.
So, before we get right into things, I do need to quickly explain why the change in name. Because, well, I actually do like the concept of Geek News Game Night and Geek News Movie Night. And frankly, one of the things that we used to do as kids, if you remember correctly, is you'd hear about, I don't know, a Pokemon marathon that's about to happen. And, like, for the whole weekend, it's nothing but Pokemon. And as a kid, you'd make sure you were available for that, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to sit back and watch it all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that we live in the era of streaming and, you can get onto a cable TV channel and be able to check out the episodes whenever you want, it's only appropriate that we also add in a marathon night, because that's basically what we do. We marathon these episodes, and then we give our opinions on what happens in them. And this is an exciting one because you picked this particular anime that we're taking on. You saw the trailer and immediately wanted to put that into the poll for the first one. And that was Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which did get recommended, but you saw the trailer and that was the one that stood out of all the trailers I showed you. And that was your pick.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to start off of is, what made you want to pick it? Like, what out of the trailer just stood out to you as I want to see this?
Probably just the use of the concept of alchemists and the use of science and stuff like that.
Science and magic, like science using magic, basically.
Pretty much.
Because you know the concept of alchemy, right? It was basically a science to kind of explain magic.
Yeah.
And so at that point, so basically what you're saying is the unique source material that's being used here.
Yeah.
To be able to properly explain it. Also, the trailer had plenty of action that I think kind of brought you in as well. That was probably a big helper to that. But I like the fact that it was the lure of alchemy that kind of brought you in, because that's when 2003 the first series happened. That's what brought me in. I was like, oh geez, an anime using alchemy, like I hadn't heard of that before, and there were a few iterations that I hadn't seen yet, but the fact that we were getting this Fullmetal Alchemist kind of concept. And I should probably clarify really quick, we are only doing Brotherhood. This is the one that you wanted to do. If at some point we decide to do 2003 Fullmetal Alchemist, then we'll let you guys know. But I'm going to try and keep the comparisons very little, because the way that it's supposed to be is Brotherhood is based off of the actual manga. There's very little filler involved in it. Where do you know the concept of filler?
Yeah.
Filler is basically when the mangaka or the manga creator is still off writing chapters. So the production crew will create arcs to be able to fill in the timeline until a new manga chapter comes out. And in some cases, like with Dragon Ball, it's like the next 20 volumes come out so that you have consistent stuff. Because the way that most anime work is like one chapter of a manga is one episode kind of thing. So like one book of a manga is an episode. But yeah, so this is based off of the manga. This is the actual story that the creators wanted to tell. And so I'm actually really excited to be able to show this to you, because this is one of those anime that I actually personally feel like you would enjoy. But it would be, and I'll say it right here now, I didn't say it to you last night when we were watching, it was going to be deep and it was going to be hard, because a lot of the series is dark and gross, and it's supposed to be kind of thing. So it was like, last night to me was like the baptismal here. It was the proving ground. If you couldn't get through the first 5, then this wasn't going to work.
Oh, come on. I saw Inuyasha, and it was probably just as...
But I would actually say that was a bit of a slog for you, too, because I don't think we really anchored... I don't think you were truly anchored until maybe, like, the second viewing session. Because I remember that first session, you were interested, but it was clear you kind of wanted to go do something else after a while, because it wasn't really hooking you. So at that point, I think by the second time we did a viewing session, that's when I think you were hooked. And because like the session that basically brought Kikyo back to life, and you're like, ooh, this is actually getting really interesting. And that's from there on in, I would say that's when you actually kind of pushed for watching Inuyasha, whereas I was pushing before then. And who knows, maybe Inuyasha will get its day in the sun, but we'll have to figure out a way to do that because there's so many seasons of it. But so we're discussing Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood today. Let's go ahead and dive in. Really quick, for those who don't know the synopsis for it, this is a 2009 anime that came out 6 years after the original 2003 edition happened. And like I said, it follows the manga more accurately, which was a lot of Japanese as well as American fans' complaint with 2003, that it followed it to an extent, but then after a point it had to kind of create its own continuity because, you know, the manga wasn't coming out fast enough. So with Fullmetal Alchemist in general, if you don't know the premise is very simple. You follow Edward Elric, the Fullmetal Alchemist, and his brother Alphonse Elric on their journey to find the Philosopher's Stone, which is always like the highly desired end game of alchemy, is to produce a Philosopher's Stone. And in this case, it's to help them to basically reset a mistake that happened in their past. And so you follow their journey as they try to discover the Philosopher's Stone, and also kind of uncover a lot of the things that lead into a Philosopher's Stone. So it's actually a really cool, awesome series. If you guys haven't watched it, I urge you honestly to go try it out. But let's go ahead and start with episode 1, and we'll get into characters after that. But episode 1, we have Fullmetal Alchemist. So this is kind of a filler episode, but one I like personally, because what they try to do here is they put you in the middle of Edward already being the Fullmetal Alchemist, and he's already handled a couple of cases up until this point, and the whole episode is based around Isaac Mcdougall, the freezing alchemist, who has basically waged war against Central Command of the country of Amestris. You didn't hear the country's name. You would eventually hear it. But it's basically like a Germanic country. And Isaac is basically a malcontent ex-military guy who is looking to destroy the government for past sins. And you don't really know what those past sins are, but that's the thing. So the whole premise of the episode is hunting down Isaac Mcdougall while also introducing the essential characters of Fullmetal Alchemist. So at that point, really quick, I want to kind of get into character analysis, and then we'll get into the episode itself. Just with the main characters that get introduced here. First things first, Edward Elric, the titular Fullmetal Alchemist. Given the 5 episodes that you've seen of his character and who he is supposed to, he's basically like this alchemy prodigy, because he learned from a very young age how to be able to do amazing alchemy, and he's a rare sight in this. But as you've kind of learned in his character, he's a very cynical person. He's kind of like that cynical scientist, where he basically questions everything in life, including things like religion, and doesn't really, has a very jaded view about how things go. What is your first take on Edward Elric, the Fullmetal Alchemist? I swear I'm going to put the narration every time I say it. It's going to be Fullmetal Alchemist. But what's your feelings on Edward in these first 5 episodes of being able to grasp his character?
He's very I don't know how to describe him, but I sure.
And I've also told her, by the way, because we have gotten comments on this, I will try and prod her a little bit to be more descriptive, but it's mainly a lot of the things that have been said is like, we would like to hear Andrea talking more so that it's not like a one-sided conversation. So at that point I will prod you a little bit more, but I'm not going to push too hard kind of thing. So sorry, keep going. So your thoughts on Edward Elric?
Pretty much what you said, basically. He's this
prodigy. He's kind of cynical. I'm gonna go ahead and ask this because, you know, this happened around the time when tweens were a big deal. How is he on the hotness scale? Because a lot of female fans will fight to the death for the sexiness of Edward Elric, even though he's 16 people. He's jailbait.
Why would I think he's sexy?
Well, like, do you think he's hot at all?
With an attitude like that, I don't think so.
So, but he doesn't have a manly enough body for you?
No.
Okay, all right. And you were kind of saying this, but I'll also kind of compliment it. Like, the cynicism kind of takes away from that in a lot of aspects. It's kind of hard to see the guy as attractive because of his worldview.
Well, he just seems so naive of the world.
He kind of is, right? He's a 16-year-old kid who thinks he knows more about the world, but then, as we saw in the episodes that we're about to talk about, the world is a lot bigger than he makes it out to be.
I mean, he probably seems smart about how things are around the world, but I think he just doesn't. He just seems so narrow-minded on it.
Well, and I would actually argue with that because, yeah, he's very close-minded, and a lot of that is because he is a naive kid. He's only been to, because like where we've seen, like maybe he's been to a few other places aside from that, but he spends a lot of time in Central. He spends a lot of time in his hometown, and that's it. Like he's not knowledgeable in the ways of the world. You put him in an alchemy library, and he's top notch. But if you put him out in real life, you can start to see that he has a very difficult time understanding it. So yeah, I would agree with you there. The naivete is very strong with Edward. What do you think about the particular reason that he has earned the name Fullmetal Alchemist? Because like one of the big things in these first couple of episodes is the reveal that, well, he's missing some limbs. In particular, he's missing his right arm and his left leg, and they have been replaced by a concept that is called automail. Basically, it's
a type of metal.
Well, no, it's like prosthetics, but you know, like the technology that we have for prosthetics is getting better, but it's not the concept. When a lot of people think prosthetics, they think like a lifeless hand, and instead, what they do in again, this is anime logic, but they basically attach this male arm to your nerves, and then it's as responsive as an actual arm or an actual leg. And they actually even shape it so that like you have fingers, you have toes and things like that. So it still feels like you have said limb kind of thing. But I will say Brotherhood doesn't really explain that too well. The 2003 series actually shows like the difficulty of maintaining that automail and how painful a process it is, because you have to, you know, activate the nerves, and yeah, it's not fun. But what did you think about seeing that automail arm and leg and seeing what he was able to do with it? Because for a lot of people, that reveal is an amazing thing. It's an awesome thing.
Well, yeah, and I think it really, really looked pretty cool.
Okay, so you like the fact that he could still do like this really fast kung fu stuff, even though he was holding not tons, but like hundreds of pounds of steel on his body?
It probably looked like it was pretty, not like extremely heavy, you know, to be able to move.
Well, and one of the cool parts about his arm and leg is that they are made of again, 2003 explains this a little bit better, but it's made of like a lightweight steel that his his mechanics specifically has created, so that he can be as lightweight as he can possibly be. Because, you know, he's pretty light on his feet, and he's got to be able to maintain that. What did you think about his ability to use alchemy? And the fact that everybody saw it as like a super unique way, specifically like he claps his hands and you could already tell like in his head, he envisions what he wants to make. And then, you know, he creates a spear out of the rock that's nearby kind of thing.
It was pretty awesome and unique, you know?
Mm-hmm. It looked more like magic than it did science. But then you listen to him talk and you're like, okay, yeah, he's got a very analytical mind. Mm-hmm. So it actually is kind of cool to see him do stuff like that. But obviously you have some character issues with him. And one of them is, we have to mention it because it is a trope of this character. He has a little bit of a problem with being called short.
And mistaken for the younger sibling, apparently.
Yes. This happens a lot. Mm-hmm. And and this is something he's very well known for. He always has something happen whenever he gets called short, which is basically an explosion. I also pointed this out to you. So this is the first time you've ever heard the actor Vic Mignogna. And this is actually this guy is like almost 60. He's been doing anime since the 70s. Lots and lots of years, and this is the role that he is most well known for. The second biggest one is he also plays Broly from the Dragon Ball series. But a lot of people know this role and love him in this role. So at that point, one of the things that happens to him a lot at conventions is people want him to do what is called the Ed Rant. Do you get what the Ed Rant is?
Yeah.
Basically, somebody called him short, and now he has to ramble out a bunch of crap all at once that is just so random that it's hilarious, kind of thing. So what did you think of a lot of those Ed Rants that you got to be able to see in the first 5 episodes?
Oh, they were just hilarious.
I loved your reaction to the first one. Just like, what? Because it was one of those really fast ones. It's like, what did he say? And don't worry about it. You'll get it eventually. I also want to bring this one up. You didn't get to see it too much, but he also has an aversion towards milk.
Well, I saw only that one time.
Yeah, you only got the one instance, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you this is a trope of Edward. He doesn't like milk. He doesn't like milk, and because he doesn't like milk, guess what they make fun of him for? Well, then you can't complain that you're short because you won't drink your milk. There's other reasons to that, but it obviously sets him off again, and you get to have those moments. So what you're saying is you like those Ed Rant moments where he immediately isn't the Fullmetal Alchemist anymore. He is just a little kid. So overall, you like the character, you want to see more, but he's not exactly the best character, is what you're saying.
At least
he's not the one you're invested in.
Well, I'm not saying that he would be interesting. I just think, you know, hopefully down the line.
His naivete bugs you.
Well, yeah, it's just kind of like, you know, maybe you see those main characters start out as these naive people that it's like it's hard to take you seriously until later on when you're...
And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And that's, in a lot of cases, how this is built. So let's go ahead and move on to the nicer of the Elrick brothers. In fact, he might be too nice. Alphonse Elrick. So what was your reaction when you saw this giant hulking suit of armor right next to little blonde boy? Did you think that he was the older brother?
It was hard to say just because he's wearing a suit of armor.
Okay, so here's the other reaction. What happened when you saw the head fly off and nothing's in there?
I was kind of surprised.
Because every episode had the head flying off. So they hammered that one home. So, yeah, what was your take on the head flying off? Nobody in there.
Well, I guess it wasn't, to be honest, I don't think it was too much too much of a shock since I saw stuff on the trailer or something that you showed me that there was a boy that lost.
Well, it's a well-known aspect.
Mm-hmm. So I guess it wouldn't have been too much of a shock unless if I never saw anything before then.
But it's still kind of shocking to see it, and because it's been a while between watching the trailer and here. So, you know, it's not uncommon to be able to say that you might have forgotten a few things. And maybe one of them was, oh yeah, big suit of armor, nothing in there. And maybe like you looked at that and went, why is that the case?
Well, I think that was one thing I did kind of fairly remember. So it's like,
Okay. And for those who don't get this, and I'm not spoiling this because this is a 2009 anime. Sorry guys, statute of spoiler limitations. Edward and Alphonse, it doesn't look like it, but they're 2 years apart. They tried to bring their mom back after their mom died. And in this world, human transmutation or human alchemy is taboo. It's forbidden. Don't do it. And they found out the hard way because Edward lost his left leg trying to bring their mom back. Al paid with his entire body. So basically he killed himself to bring his mom back. And because of that payment, Edward couldn't deal with it, especially since what they brought back, you could argue probably wasn't their mom. He then sacrifices his right arm to bring Al back. But the way he does is that he basically creates this soul bonding tattoo out of his own blood and puts it in a suit of armor. And that's what anchors Alphonse's soul to the suit of armor. So at that point, like that's why it's an empty suit of armor, is because it's just his soul that's basically attached to it. His body's not in there. And that's part of the big struggle that they're trying to find the Philosopher's Stone, is they want to bring Alphonse back from the other side, whatever you want to call it. So the question that I have is like, what compared to Edward, what is the first thing you noticed about Alphonse in comparison?
Like before? Or
No, just in these 5 episodes. I'm saying, like, here's Ed's personality. What's the one thing that you could think of that is directly different from Edward compared to Alphonse? We're not going to say Alphonse all the time. It's probably going to be Ed and Al because it's easier to say that. But what's a big difference between Ed and Al?
Well, Al is just a kind, open person.
He's a lot kinder, isn't he?
An open-minded person, and
I would actually say he's a lot more innocent too. Mm-hmm. Like Ed plays off as like this jaded, I know how the world works kind of thing, and Al still kind of plays himself off as the innocent child. He doesn't know how the world works. He only knows like his portion of it, kind of thing. And actually, in my opinion, that endears him as a character. Like, a lot of people might hate Ed right off the bat, but they're anchored to Al. Mm-hmm. They at least want to see Al's kind of viewpoint on things. I also me personally, I love that Al is just so lovably naive. He does not get how the world works. And it's great to be able to see him have those like first reactions of, oh, this is why this happens kind of thing. But again, he is 2 years younger than Ed. And I also love that he doesn't want to be a part of any of the Ed rants, but everybody immediately assumes, because Fullmetal Alchemist, he's Edward Elrick.
Oh yeah, because
he's the alchemist of the full suit of armor. It makes sense, right? Full metal. And he's always just like, actually, that's not me. That's him. Every time. Because you could also tell, and I love how they animate the armor at sometimes. They actually make it way more emotive than even Ed. And it's just like, he knows it upsets his brother, and he doesn't want to upset his brother. Mm-hmm. But it happens all the time. So I'll let you kind of take it away. Your viewpoints on Alphonse, like what do you notice about him? What do you like? What do you not like about him?
I just think he's a more tolerable character to,
Mm-hmm. Probably because he's humble enough to know that he doesn't get the world.
Oh yeah, and he's just kind and compassionate about things, and
Yeah. He's way more willing to help in a lot of cases.
oh yeah.
I will say Al has a little bit of selfishness, and the only selfishness is basically he wants his body back. But if it means like that he can't help somebody to get to that goal, I think he'd help every single person.
Oh yeah.
Unlike Ed, who's like, nope, stay on task, kind of thing. So would you say you like Al better right now, or do you like Ed better?
I probably like Al better.
Yeah, Al's kind of lovable in a weird way. So those are the two main characters that we're going to be following a lot of this, but I want to kind of go into some of the side characters that have been introduced. First of all is Roy Mustang, aka the Flame Alchemist. He is Ed's commanding officer, basically. So Ed reports to Colonel Roy Mustang. And you also even get to see a little bit of Mustang's unit. We're not going to get into all of them, but they are all technically side characters. Roy Mustang is, and it's not really shown that well. He's kind of an up and comer in the military. He's trying to earn his stripes, as it were. He's trying to reach the top ranks. We don't really know why, other than he's got a bit of an ego to him. What did you think of Roy Mustang in the episodes you got to see him in?
He just was I don't know, he just seemed like he was a very important character to the two boys,
Yeah, he also just seems kind of an important character when he's on the screen. Because he's supposed to be their boss, and he's supposed to be helping them out in their pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone. But it's okay, you can say it. The first couple of episodes kind of paint him as a dunderhead.
Really? I didn't think that, but...
You didn't think it was funny that every episode that Roy ever showed up, it was raining?
Well, no.
And his own subordinates would say he is, quote, useless in the rain?
Well, there was only one episode that seemed...
Three of them where he was in the rain.
Well, yeah.
And two of them where he said he was useless in the rain. Simply because the way his alchemy works is that he creates a spark in his hand and snaps, and then fire goes out. And when it's raining, you can't create a spark. So you didn't think that was hilarious?
Well, I thought that only one time that I noticed that.
It's two.
Well,
it was two of them, because it happened during a couple of fight scenes where two of them were rain. One of them was actually Isaac Mcdougall. When we get into the episode, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but he basically used the Flame Alchemist's weakness against him and sprayed him with water so that he couldn't create a spark, kind of thing. But yeah, so I mean, do you have reason to love or hate Roy Mustang with what you've seen of him?
I liked him. I mean, he
seems like he might be a good guy, but you kind of wonder, because the military, you got to be wondering about that, because some of them might be just career men that don't care. But what you're saying is that you've got a sense that he might care.
Well, yeah.
Do you get a sense that he cares for the Elrick boys?
Yeah.
Like in a father figure kind of way? I would argue that. I think he's got kind of that loving older brother kind of thing, but...
Well, as soon as I see more episodes, then I will determine on that, so...
What did you think of it? And this is the other thing that I want to get into too, because it is the highlight of this episode, or of this series, the alchemy. So we talked a little bit about the Fullmetal Alchemist's alchemy. What did you think of Roy Mustang's alchemy when you were able to see it? Like, he snaps and whoosh, big flames come out.
I thought that was pretty awesome.
Nice, right?
It just makes you think of, like, Avatar, The Last Airbender,
Avatar, The Last Airbender. Another comparison that I like to see with is actually a WoW joke. It's a joke of like what every fire mage thinks they look like, or what every fire mage looks like in WoW, what they think they look like, and it's Roy Mustang just going boom, 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 because that's how a fire mage thinks. Like, you just want to see things explode when you snap your fingers, and Roy kind of embodies that. and he's actually really well known for that. So, okay, you like the character. In fact, what you said to me right off the bat, he is your favorite alchemist that has been shown so far.
Yeah.
Because of the fire. Makes you want to be a fire mage, doesn't it? Let's go ahead and go into his direct subordinate, Riza Hawkeye. We got more of a highlight with her than any of his other subordinates, so we'll cover them another day. But Riza Hawkeye is basically his, for lack of a better term, personal security. She's a sharpshooter that, and this is another thing you kind of notice. There are alchemists in the military, and then there are regular military people. And she is like the sharpshooter in the military who has Roy Mustang's back, but also has no problem making fun of him when it's a rainy day. Mm-hmm. What did you think of Riza Hawkeye? No, that is her name.
Not much to say on her, really.
Really? Not a whole lot?
No.
Is it just because she's kind of blank to you, or they kind of play her off as very stoic? Like a stoic female military type. But you're getting nothing off of her so far?
No.
Okay. Well, that's kind of sad, because I love a lot of what was done in this series with Riza, and you'll see in a little bit, but Riza wasn't necessarily a focus in 03, because again, a lot of the lore behind her happened later in the manga. So I actually do like the performance here a little bit more than 03. Simply because they gave her a little bit more to work with other than stoic female in the military kind of thing. You didn't think it was funny that she kept on making fun of Roy?
Well, yeah, but
you can tell they got a very close relationship. Like, because she has no problem making fun of him.
I mean, she's had a few funny moments here and there, but there's not much to say. I could say on it. I especially love the moment where she pulls out a suitcase full of Flame Alchemist gloves. It's like, you are useless in the rain. And she goes, like, that's your job. You have to carry around the suitcase full of Flame Alchemist gloves. Okay, so another subordinate. Well, this isn't a subordinate. He kind of comes off as a person that Roy reports to, is Lieutenant Colonel Maze Hughes. Or as a lot of people love to call him, the family man, Maze Hughes, because everything based around Maze Hughes is his wife and daughter. You have no idea how many times I have been compared to Maze Hughes ever since we had our kids. Really?
You have no idea. And I'm not knocking people. I love it too. And you know what? I've actually, one of my aspirations when you told me that we were pregnant is like, I am going to be the most Maze Hughes dad I could ever possibly be. Oh, and by the way, have you seen my daughter? She's just super cute, isn't she? Mm-hmm. What did you think of Maze Hughes?
He was hilarious.
Yes. He's a loving father, right? You can kind of get that.
Well, yeah. He seems like he'll take things serious. And then all of a sudden he'll do a 180, and then all of a sudden it's like, where did that guy come from?
Yep. He's actually one of the weird contrasts from 03 to Brotherhood, because Brotherhood paints the family man aspect of Maze Hughes, which everybody loves. But in 03, a lot of people forget that he's supposed to be like this intelligence officer. He's basically like kind of secret agent dude. And 03 tries to paint that more as like he can hold his own in a fight kind of thing. Like, because one of his trademarks is that he has like these little dart knives that are under his sleeves, and they played that out as often as they could in 03. But in Brotherhood, it gets shown a little bit. But it's more the family man aspect of Maze Hughes that we get to see.
Well, it just seems like he's like the type of guy he's like, I'm going to volunteer to be kind of like the surrogate father to these two boys. And they're like, feel like, oh man, do we feel embarrassed because this guy is acting like...
But at the same time, it's cute, right?
Well, yeah.
Like, he's like, you little boys, you're in a big city all by yourself. You can't be trusted. Come live with me. And basically, shoves this extra responsibility onto his wife, who doesn't care.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, one of my favorite female characters of Fullmetal Alchemist is Gracia Hughes, because she's just that loving mother type that you don't get to see in series like this that often. Okay, so you love him as the family man. In fact, he was kind of the one that stood out to you the most, I think, is what you said.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's just such a family man. And I especially love the joke that he makes with his little daughter, Alicia, where he's like, Daddy, your whiskers are bugging me. What, these whiskers? I'm gonna do that to our kids one of these days. It's just going to happen. So those are the subordinates that we're going to go over. But there is another alchemist that we need to talk about. Simply because he has made his appearance known, and that is the irreplaceable, frankly, because nobody else is like him, the strong-arm alchemist, Alex Louis Armstrong. Or, as a lot of people like to joke, the sparkly alchemist or the manly man alchemist. So, this was a unique sight to see your reaction to him. Oh, it was so great. Your reaction, you have to explain this, like what's going through your head when you see Alex Louis Armstrong. You have to say it all. Alex Louis Armstrong.
Jeez, when I first saw that...
She can't contain the laughter, people.
Seeing that guy, it was like, okay, so this guy is pretty much like
He's a very big pretty boy.
Well, he's like the muscle man of the whole bunch, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, his shirt just magically disappears, and you're like, what the...
See, I prepared her for none of this. None of this. And in fact, what's funny is, I can guarantee you there's stuff from the trailer you don't remember because he was highlighted.
I'm sure he was. I'm sure.
So the first thing I have to ask is, like, did you notice the little sparkle that they always have, like, right above his head?
Yeah.
That's why he's called the Sparkly Alchemist, because they love putting the sparklies up on him. He's just so pretty. He's just so pretty.
I still love the one where he was, like, coming in when Ed was recovering.
Yeah.
His shirt just disappeared.
Let me give you a perfect example of a perfect specimen so you can heal properly.
Oh.
See? I can already tell you it's working. Oh, man. Alex Louis Armstrong. Okay, look. I have my misgivings about Chris Sabat. Especially given what we've learned recently about him. But this is definitely one of those standout performances for him. And I'm so glad that he did it, because I don't know if Alex could have been any better personified than through Chris Sabat and his silliness. But yeah, you also got to know one of the well-known tropes of Alex Louis Armstrong, which was him and his shirt are very easily separated. Very easily separated. What did you think about every episode he was in, his shirt came off?
Jeez, you think he had a way of being able to use alchemy to disintegrate that shirt, like?
But then you always find that it's just he took it off. It's just laying somewhere. It should be covered in mud, but it never is. Oh my gosh! And then what did you think of his alchemy? So he had like these alchemic gloves that basically he can manipulate earth and rock. To be able to make spikes and things like that, but also he likes making sculptures of himself. Yeah.
He just seems kind of...
You didn't notice that? Like, amidst the spikes, you could see little sculptures of himself.
Yeah, I saw that. He's pretty...
Because it is a technique that has been passed down the Armstrong line for generations!
It's like, are you trying to be self-absorbent?
He is kind of, but it's a lovable kind of self-absorbed. And in fact is played a lot better here than it is in 03. 03, it's awkward. It's awkward. So
I'm surprised he doesn't go into see a mirror and flex in the mirror or something.
I think that's why mirrors don't exist in Central Command, is because he would. I don't think there are many mirrors in Central Command, and I'd like to personally think it's because of Alex Armstrong that they can't have them. You'd be like, oh, I'm such a great specimen. Because, yeah, he can also do that, too. The weird flexing of pecs. Oh my gosh. And then what did you think about his manly physique? Bit overdone?
No, it kind of suited him.
Oh my gosh. And what makes it even better is he's basically bald aside from this one bit of hair that's there, which makes you think like, oh, male pattern baldness. And then he also has that noble mustache.
Well, it's like a Charlie Brown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what makes it even better. Uh-huh. It's like, oh yeah, well, you're a picturesque source of manliness, but also I think male pattern baldness runs in the family. So these are kind of the side characters that I want to bring up, at least for right now, because we'll get to see a lot of them throughout the series. Like Ed and Al will work with Roy Mustang, Mace Hughes, Reza Hawkeye, Alex Louis Armstrong a lot, and so you'll get to know these guys very, very well. And already, like, are you worried about that, or are you already liking the cast of characters here?
No, I like the cast of characters.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into the first episode. So we were talking about it. It covers Isaac Mcdougall, the freezing alchemist, who basically has a grudge with Central Command and wants to eliminate the Amestris government. And so a lot of the episode is basically chasing him down and trying to foil his plan, which is basically to free Central Command over through use of what they suspect is a Philosopher's Stone. But a lot of it is just simply, okay, they think they have him, and then they don't have him. And a lot of his abilities, even though he's called the Freezing Alchemist, is he's basically got a mastery over water. He can boil the water, he can create steam, he can boil the water in your own body or freeze it. So you have a lot of like frozen guys and exploded guys that come in his path. What was your overall thoughts on the plot here of trying to catch the Freezing Alchemist and what he was trying to do?
I guess you can't think of a great introductory for, it's just strange to see.
Well, he's kind of villain of the day. Mm-hmm. He's kind of villain of the day, so there's not really a whole lot you can do about it. The premise of a lot of this episode is to introduce Ed and introduce Al, introduce their tropes, introduce Roy, introduce Armstrong and Hughes, but it isn't really focused around Mcdougall.
No.
Because he's just trying to get his job done. Which actually gets creepy after a while because you actually start to see him use his own blood as water for his alchemy, which is still creepy for me.
Just again, this kind of feels like Avatar.
It feels like bloodbending, right?
Bloodbending. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah. See, here's the thing. Bloodbending is creepy in its own right, just because of the involuntary movement. But this guy, like, literally takes his blood and makes it into spears.
I know.
And into swords. And that's creepy, too. So I'd say they're creepy in and of their own rights. Especially when you get to have the kind of final showdown with him and Fuhrer King Bradley, where he basically just sucks out a lot of his blood and makes a spear with it. He's just like, you aren't feeling dizzy in the slightest? That's a lot of blood if you think about it to make that spear. And in fact, that's actually probably one of the more noticeable parts of this episode is his showdown with his target, basically, the Fuhrer King Bradley, who is the head of Central Command, and he gets to have a showdown with him, and it kind of ends abruptly. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Overall, like, what I know we didn't go over too much of the plot of this episode, and that's actually one of the complaints we got with G Gundam is we got too involved in the plot there. But really quick, do you have a favorite moment of the episode Fullmetal Alchemist?
Probably just the very end when the
Fuhrer caught him.
Yeah, and he's like just kind of like cool and collected, and all of a sudden, there's just that one final moment.
Really quick, let's do a quick character thing on the Fuhrer, because he does get a little bit of focus in these episodes, but there's definitely something off about him, right? He seems like, he knows how to fight, but all you get is this kind dad figure.
Well, he's that one guy that just seems like he could just stand there and in a blink of an eye, he takes his opponent down like there's no...
Yeah, and you don't see it coming at all. So it's just like, okay, well, maybe that helps you kind of understand why he is where he is in the military. But it also is kind of shocking to, just see him immediately bounce back to, oh, Full Metal, it's so good to see you. I just so happen to have the luck of running into the freezing alchemist. Like you see that change in personality between these alter egos of him, like the serious soldier and then who I like to call the Führer, the Führer everybody knows, where he's very humble and all that. What did you think of that switch?
Kind of fitting for...
Do you question him? Does it make you, like, very suspicious of him?
No, I just think he's just kind of like the...
grizzled veteran kind of thing.
Yeah, or he's like the... kind of like the Yoda.
Okay, all right, I'll give you that. So, yeah, other... do you have any other good moments from this episode?
No, it's just the average...
I will say one of my favorite moments is Mcdougall getting one up on Roy Mustang, where he basically blasts him with water and now he can't use his flames.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the fight between those two were pretty cool, with flame and water, and...
Yep. Roy doesn't get a whole lot of focus here, but eventually, like, he does end up saving the day because he takes care of all of the transmutation circles that Mcdougall has set up throughout Central to freeze it over. He just gets pissed off enough that he just explodes them all and gets rid of all of the transmutation circles. Obviously, all the combat between Ed, Al, and Mcdougall is great. In fact, one of my favorite moments is not when he creates the spear for the Führer. It's when he takes his blood and just makes it into like these thorns that pierce Edward's shoulder. Not the automail shoulder, the other shoulder. Mm-hmm. And that's creepy because you can see it just janking in the air. And that's always very weird to me for me to see. So we'll also keep this trope here of like out of 5, what would you rate Fullmetal Alchemist? Is it a good introduction considering it is a filler episode?
I'll probably give it a 3.
It's a 3 for you? It's just average.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what did it do wrong, I guess is a better question.
I guess I just don't usually prefer going straight into something like that and then having a backstory following the next.
You'd rather be at the beginning?
Yeah, or at least introduce it a little differently, I guess.
I'm kind of there too. It didn't make sense to me either when I first saw the series. I'm like, why are you starting up with filler? You should just start at the beginning of the story. But no, like I believe the way the manga works is they actually did try to show a couple of the other cases to show Ed, as a competent alchemist, and then they went into the backstory. So, all right, let's go ahead and go into episode 2, which is proverbially the backstory.
Well, what did you rate it as?
Oh, sorry. I was right there with you. 3 out of 5. Sorry, I thought I made that clear. So let's go into episode 2, The First Day, which is basically, it's a backstory episode, but it's told through the perspective of Ed and Al as they are on the train to a place called Lior. This is something that we heard throughout the first episode. They had train tickets to Lior, and they had an assignment there, but we didn't really know too much. And while they're on the train, they're explaining their backstory kind of thing, which is that when they were very young, their mother died of an illness. Basically, an epidemic kind of came through their village and killed off their mom. And because they were learning alchemy at that point, they decided to break the taboo that we keep on hearing about. Human transmutation is forbidden, and they want to bring their mom back. Which makes sense. They're both really little kids at this point. They're basically orphaned because their dad is nowhere. He ran off at some point. And so they're basically required to fend for themselves. So they decide very early to through alchemy to bring their mom back. Now, thankfully, we do see that they've got a relationship with another couple of people in the town, specifically Panako Rockbell and her granddaughter Winry. And this is where I want to get into a little bit more character stuff. What did you think of Panako and Winry, what you were able to see of them? You could kind of get the concept they're family friends. And it just so happens that they run an automail shop in their town. So you could tell that they're both experts in that regard. What did you think of let's start with Panako. So Panako's the grandma. I'm just calling her name. You'll find it out later. What did you think of Panako Rockbell?
I mean, she seemed like a nice grandmother, but it was really funny.
Kind of stern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially when she and Ed get into that.
This is the only time you got to see it, but you'll see it later.
That argument was great.
Over milk?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love it, especially since she's making short jokes to the guy who's slightly taller than her. And she's holding her own in this whole arc. I love Panako. In that regard, she's great. But I also kind of look at her as kind of the blacksmith's wife. She's very stern, very cold. Obviously because she's running this automail shop. So I actually would say like some of her best moments are actually in this first episode, where you get to see her kind of stick up for Ed and Al after they try to transmute their mom and it fails. She makes her opinion very well known that she does not think what they brought back was their mom. And also on top of that, these two, they're very, very protective of the boys.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as Roy is basically like, well, we'll help you be able to get your body back and all that, she's kind of the first person to say, no, they've already wrecked their lives. Why do you want to wreck it further?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Anything else you want to add in there?
No.
What did you think about her? One of the traits of her character, dat pipe, yo. She's got a little wooden pipe with like little gold things right at the end of it. Did you not notice that?
I didn't.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a trademark of her. She loves smoking that pipe, especially when they have like dialogue heavy scenes. She's got that. And in fact, I love the fact that, when she starts screaming at Roy, she puts the pipe down.
I did not even notice that.
Oh, yeah. I've had a lot of... 03 kind of got me into the mannerisms of the characters, and then Brotherhood was just that much more enjoyable to see them play out more. But Panako, you could also kind of tell, always tried to make a place for Ed and Al. Like, I mean, am I wrong about that?
No.
Every night they had them over. Is basically the way they make it sound.
I mean, that just kind of seems the typical average.
And that's the only way she got milk into his system was stew. I love that. He's like, don't you see that stew is the greatest thing ever? It even makes milk taste good. It's like, wow, she's a really good parent right there. Sorry, continue. Sorry.
No, she just seems like the typical average person. Like, they know, well, they're orphans, so
kind of adoptive mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is kind of how they kind of view it. What did you think of Winry? Granted, you saw her very young, so at that point, like, did you notice anything major about her, or was she just annoying little girl?
She seemed to care about, like, if they are kind of friends, but at the same time, it kind of seemed like
she gets kind of picked on by him.
Yeah, like, she kind of seems whiny if Ed makes some snarky comment about something. She just, like, goes off, and it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they kind of paint her out in the second episode, or like in those younger days of like being out of the loop, because she's not really part of the whole plot to bring mom back. They don't want to explain it to her, but she's still a close friend, and it's probably because they spend so much time over at the Rockbells to be able to get dinner and all that stuff. But I would say that, and I've seen a lot of people complain about this, that Winry in her younger years seems a lot more annoying. I don't see that. I actually don't see a whole lot of change in her personality. She always has seemed to be like always wanting to be there to try and help them, kind of thing. I think, in all honesty, if she gotten brought into the whole plot to bring Mom back, she probably would have helped, because she cared about him. And I love Winry. Winry is one of my favorite female protagonists of all of anime. In fact, fun fact, when Vanilla on YouTube asked me to do the best waifu or the waifu awards, and she wasn't in the list, but I originally made a script for Winry Rockbell because I love her character, and you'll see why once we get to the older Winry, to see like what kind of character she is.
Would you say she'd be kind of like similar to like Rain and Domon, you know, like they have that kind of no.
Nope. Different aesthetic. Different aesthetic. It's why I like Winry a lot more than Rain. Rain is very annoying to me. Winry is very sweet. So you'll see that in a little bit, because they were kind of hinting at the last episode that we watched that you would get to see the teenage Winry kind of thing. So overall, you like them. You like the Rockbells, and they actually are going to play into things, because when crap hits the fan, Ed and Al always go home. Like, they always try to go back to their hometown of Risenbool, and they spend time with the Rockbells kind of thing, because this series doesn't really showcase it, but when they decided to be alchemists, they actually burned their house down. After, when they decided to leave and become state alchemists, they burned their house down to basically show their resolve and being able to make up for the sins of the past. So, okay, so we get into this, we get the backstory of everything that happened between them, and you get to see kind of that after moment of when they tried to summon their mom and it didn't work out, and Roy comes in and kind of consoles them, but says, you know, I can help you in whatever way possible. I actually like the concept that we got to see a very broken Edward out of that. But another thing I like that they did here that 03 kind of failed on is they showed a little bit more of a magical property to what Ed can do than alchemy is, which is, if you remember the scene of when he sacrificed his leg, he went to this all white place with a giant gate, and he gets thrown in, and it's basically like it's shoving information into his head too fast. And so at that point, he has a lot more knowledge about being an alchemist. All the while, he's being talked to by this weird figure that is basically making sure he holds up his part of the deal. What did you think of that? Like, actually going into a mystical aspect when alchemy is supposed to be all about science.
I mean, that was kind of pretty cool.
Who did you think that figure was?
I don't know. It was like some...
Because he doesn't answer it. He says, I'm the world, I'm God, I'm truth. I'm trying to remember all the things that he says. Like, do you think he's God?
Or just some mystical being or something, or I don't know.
Okay. All right. Here, the reason I ask this is because, you know, we're probably going to see this guy again, or this character again. And at that point, like, maybe we'll just kind of compare, like, do we think he's God? Do we think he's truth incarnate? Kind of thing. All we know is that he's damn creepy, especially with his wanting you to pay kind of thing. What did you also think about when they were doing the human transmutation, like this big eye just opens up in the middle of their transmutation circle?
That was creepy.
Yeah, that was, right? Kind of Cthulhian in a weird way. And here's the thing, that didn't happen in the 03 series. And I love that this is a trope of Brotherhood, that they have, like, when human transmutation happens, weird shit like that happens. Because it's like, oh, you have stepped too far. So I really like that. Any other big moments that you want to mention from this episode?
No, I think we covered it.
I will say, like, one of my favorites is obviously looking at Ed and Al right after, and having Roy like, "What did you do?" and Ed is just blank. He has like, they show later through Roy like, no, he had a determination in his eyes. He's just like blank, traumatized, and Ed is just sitting there, or Al's just sitting there going, "Oh, we're sorry, kind of thing. I love how this compared to 03, how this scene was painted in Brotherhood. Okay, so final review of first day. Where would you put it on a scale of 1 to 5?
Probably 4.
So you like the backstory that was how it was explained.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would actually put it up there too, about 4.5, because this was a much better interpretation of what happened to their mom than 03. It goes way more in depth as to like what was going on, and a lot of the stuff that we see in this episode wasn't explained in 03 until 20 episodes later. So like the whole, there was a gate and all that, and I'm like, wow, that would have been really cool to know, like this mystical property in an alchemy series. So I'll give it that, 4 out of 5. So then we go into episode 3, City of Heresy. So this is where they actually go to Lior. And the reason that they are there is because of a prophet in the area who is claiming to be able to work miracles in honor of the sun god Lior. Or Leto, sorry. The sun god Leto. And some are even saying that maybe he can bring the dead back to life. So obviously you can tell what brought Ed and Al to Lior. A guy who said who the major claim is he can bring the dead back to life. Maybe he does have the Philosopher's Stone. And you kind of get to know the atmosphere of Lior. Like they're totally bought into Father Cornello, who is the prophet. They're totally bought into like he can do everything he says he can. What did you think about that? Like, were you at any point kind of considering that, maybe this is miracles that maybe Ed can explain?
I thought it seemed kind of fishy to me.
The whole thing just kind of seemed fishy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because they, especially painting it from the Elrick's perspective, it does feel fishy because they're basically like analyzing everything he does, and all of it to them looks like alchemy. So at that point, it's like, okay, well, obviously he's using alchemy to be able to do this job. What did you so that we also get introduced to the character Rose, who has a little bit more of a meaning in the 03 series, not here. But we do follow her a great deal in this episode. What do you think of Rose? Like this ever faithful follower of Leto, and we actually find out it's because her boyfriend died. And
her fiance.
Her fiance died, and Cornello has promised her through her faith that the dead can be brought back to life.
I think she kind of annoyed me at the very
Really?
end.
Okay, explain that. Like, what annoyed you about her?
I mean, it's great that she had faith and all, but I think eventually it's like you should just accept it, you know.
So your problem wasn't necessarily her faith. Your problem was that you could kind of tell her faith was misplaced.
Probably for the most part. It's like, so if he's gone, and you can't bring the dead back, then it's like she just has to learn to accept it, eventually, and just move on.
But she wasn't willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people aren't willing to do that, Andrea. How did you? Because to me, they're powerful interactions. What did you think of Rose's interactions with Ed? Like she's like this faithful person. Like God will hear our prayers and answer everything, and then he comes in being the cynical scientist and basically taking his usual cynical approach. What did you think of those interactions between them?
Well, that's just the typical average, Some people try to prove one way versus another, one proves by facts and the other person
Do
proves...
you think that Ed was doing it simply to prove that he was smarter, or do you think he was like maybe trying to soften the blow for what was about to come?
I think it's just more like, I don't really believe in all that stuff, especially since if stuff by use of facts and science don't work, then what makes you think faith is going to be?
Because he doesn't see the logical reason that she's doing all this stuff. What did you think of basically Cornello getting revealed? Because she brings in Ed and Al to meet Father Cornello, and at that point is basically right in front of Rose proven to be a fraud. Because he's just been using alchemy to further his own ambitions. So he creates a chimera to protect him. He's trying to think of some of the other things that he did while he was in there. Like he creates a little Leto idol and all that. That eventually, once the tables kind of turn for him, he basically tries to get her to be the loyal zealot and try to get her to shoot Ed. The God is telling you to murder, so be a good girl and murder for me, kind of thing. What was your take on that whole scene?
That was just creepy.
Creepy as in...
And just psycho, really. It's like, why on earth would you tell somebody to go kill somebody?
Wouldn't that be like your first red flag? Like, God wants me to kill?
I don't even know why she would go through with it just for that,
I mean, I could kind of understand the motivation. She wanted her fiance back. So at that point, I think she would have moved mountains to make that happen. But a lot of that was just basically the true twisting of this is that Cornello tried to twist her grief to his advantage.
Pretty much.
Kind of thing. And it's very sad to see that. But would you also say that it's also really great to see him revealed? How Ed and Al basically out him as nothing more than a petulant man. That was a great moment, right?
Yeah.
They took the town bell and made it a speaker. Because one of the things that's really interesting about this is that he does like these radio addresses that they all catch, and they use the radio system against him and caught him on live audio, basically on a hot mic, saying that he doesn't give a crap about any of these people. They're basically his army.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about that? Do you think Ed crossed a line? A lot of people think Ed crossed a line.
Yeah. They were all pretty upset about it.
No, I've seen a lot of debate saying that Ed is the bad guy of that episode because he destroyed the faith of all of those people by showing Cornello out to be the snake oil salesman that he was. I don't have that viewpoint. I don't think he did it to be mean. I think he did it because even he could see the problem.
Well, yeah, even if he was it's like whether if he was right or wrong on his beliefs. But the guy was just, using people to create an army and all that stuff. And
And then also, what did you think about? So it kind of does get proven that he does have a philosopher's stone to some extent. But when Ed tries to grab it, the stone basically just disintegrates.
I don't even know I don't even know how he would have been able to.
Basically, what they start saying afterwards is that it was a fake. It was a fake philosopher's stone.
And I wonder how he managed to do alchemy with a fake stone like that.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because the one thing that you're kind of getting from because here's a fun fact: Mcdougall also had a tiny little bead like that too, and it was in his blood. And that's how he was able to utilize his alchemy as well as he was. It does kind of make you go, wow, because anybody who uses this can basically ignore the laws of alchemy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because remember, the whole emphasis of the series is the law of equivalent exchange. In order to make one thing, you have to have it equally distributed from something else. So at that point, what they were basically doing was creating something out of nothing. So they obviously were ignoring the law of equivalent exchange. Not so much for Mcdougall, but totally for Cornello. Because he was like creating Leto idols out of nowhere. He was able to, and you could kind of tell he didn't really have any alchemic experience, and he was able to make a chimera. He was able to fuse animals together into this monster. Like that is definitely something you have to consider, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to ask this last scene because of your viewpoint on Rose. What did you think of Ed and Al basically leaving her at rock bottom? Like, she realizes that her faith has been misplaced this entire time, and it sounds like years. It was placed in a fraud, and now she has to go on with her life.
Well, she kind of does.
Do you expect her to not be there the next time they go to Lior?
Well, hopefully she moved on and...
Like, did it make you cry the way that she was? It's okay to say if you did.
I didn't cry for her, really.
But you felt bad for her.
I felt bad, but at the same time, I think... I don't know. I mean... I guess, you know, there are just some things you just can't expect miracles to happen like that, you know.
Okay. So what was your favorite moment from City of Heresy? For me, it's exposing Cornello.
That was the best.
Because for me, like, exposing frauds is always a big deal for me, especially the way that Ed did it. It's kind of inventive. He used his own radio system against him. So I guess at that point, if we don't have different favorite moments, what out of 5 would you give City of Heresy?
Maybe 3.5.
3.5. Okay. What? So that kind of indicates like it did something wrong. What did it do wrong?
What makes you think it was wrong? Something wrong?
Well, I'm just saying, like, we've pointed out the positives. What did you think the negative was?
Well, like I said, it just kind of drove me crazy with Rose. Just
So the whole religion versus science kind of argument here.
No, but just what things she would go to the lengths just to get what she wanted.
Okay, so you kind of see it more as like a selfish endeavor, and not a selfish in a good way. Okay, I'd probably go a little bit lower. I'd probably go a 2, and the main reason I would is because, in my opinion, this is one of those episode arcs that, the 2003 series did better, because they actually had a lot of really good moments. In between all of that, where I think the points that they tried to hammer in this episode are better done there. For example, one of my favorite moments, and probably is going to be in the opening of this podcast, is, in fact, it's, in my opinion, it's Ed's best performance as Edward. It's Vic's best performance as Edward Elrick. Is the very first episode where you get the reveal that his arm isn't real. Like, it's not skin and bone. It's exactly how you saw it, like when the Chimera tries to get a taste off of him, and then he rips it off. And Cornello explains, like, he performed the ultimate taboo. He tried to bring a human back from the grave. Except you have a really good description in the 03 episode of basically him screaming at Rose, saying basically, "Is this what you want? Look!" And he's ripped the coat off, and you can see his automail arm. And you could see the price that he's paid to be able to do it. And it's actually a more powerful moment there than it is in Brotherhood. They kind of skimmed over Lior, in my opinion, for this one. So moving on into episode 4, An Alchemist's Anguish.
I thought you were not going into the 2000.
I'm going to make some comparisons here and there, but I'm going to try very hard not to. It's just hard not to do that for the first 5, because these are arcs that got a lot more attention minus Mcdougall. He didn't get an explanation in 03, but the Lior one did, and the backstory did. So episode 4, An Alchemist's Anguish. This is the episode involving Shao Tucker, the sewing life alchemist, who, after coming back from Lior, Roy Mustang recommends that they go talk to him because he is known for being able to make a chimera, a fusion of animals, understand and speak human language. And so at that point, Roy thinks, like, maybe if you talk to him, you'll be able to fill in some of the gaps for human transmutation that you didn't know before. So we get to meet Shao, as well as his daughter, and be able to kind of get to know them throughout this episode. But the whole premise is basically they get to meet Shao Tucker, and then they get to realize the dark truth that is behind his discovery, the reason he's well known as the sewing life alchemist. What did you think of this episode going through? Like, what did you think of Shao Tucker and his family?
Well, you think at the very beginning he's just some, you know, average,
kind of a quiet guy.
Yeah, just doing his discoveries and all that stuff, and
okay,
don't know the shade of truth what he has.
No. What did you think of his daughter, Nina, and her big dog, Alexander?
Just the happy-go-lucky.
Super cute, right? I especially love that one of the comedic angles in this episode was having Alexander constantly land on Ed, and they always make it out that Alexander's bigger than he is.
Yeah.
I love that concept, and I also love the fact that they kind of emphasize a little bit more the attachment between Ed and Al and Nina and Alexander. Because while they're trying to read these books, the Nina and Alexander would come in and just be like, "Can you play with me?" And so they'd play with them a little bit in between study sessions. What did you think about the dark truth of Shao Tucker's success? Because we start to understand, like, oh, well, their mother ran off like a couple of weeks after he, or before he was able to do the whole talking chimera, and she just ran off and never came back. And then we find out the truth that his wife was actually part of that talking chimera. And the reason we find out is because he does it again. Except this time he fuses Nina and Alexander together.
That was twisted.
Pretty fucked up, right? This was the episode that was the proving grounds. If she couldn't handle Shao Tucker, this wasn't going anywhere. So go ahead, Twisted, explain.
I'm just thinking, why on earth would you do that to your own family members just to pass certification for that?
Well, I think he explained it fairly well.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be poor again.
Yeah, but is it really worth that?
To him, it was.
I'll just say it was all.
What'd you think about the switch in personality with Shao? He was like this quiet dude when they met at first, and then he kind of shifts when the truth is revealed.
He looked like he was pretty much disturbed in his own right there.
Straight up psychotic. In fact, the character or the actor that plays him, I'm actually a lover of the voice actor, but in my opinion, Shao Tucker's like one of his best performances because he has to go from being like this very quiet individual to you and I are the same, Edward. And it's creepy as hell to listen to him do that. His name is escaping me right now, but he's kind of involved in the Vic Mignogna lawsuits. For those who don't know, look up the actor who played Android 17 in Dragon Ball Z. It's the same guy. Or Hiei in Yu Yu Hakusho. Same guy. It's a really twisted moment to see him go from basically the truth revealed, the psychotic man under all of the masks that he plays for everybody else. And the only reason he did all this is because he didn't want to be poor again. So he had to pass his state certification, and he sacrificed his own young daughter to do it.
Oh, joy.
Just to put it out there, you're in the room with him. How would he have gotten punished? Like, you're in the room with Shao Tucker and you find out all this stuff. Does he walk away? Or is he killed on the spot by Andrea?
Well, he got what he deserved at the end.
Yes, and it actually kind of sets up for another arc. But I'm saying, if you were in the room, put a bullet in him? Or do you just walk away?
I don't know.
I like seeing this debate online. I'm on the put a bullet in him side.
Really?
Because to me, the true crossing the line was Nina. Because Nina was the ultimate innocent in all of this. And all because of his motives, he decided to ruin her forever. To me, that's a put a bullet in you moment. Like, we don't consider it. We don't send you to trial. We put a bullet in you. Because there's no, like, this child was not involved in any of it. And you brought her in.
I know, and she was just trying to support him and saying, you'll be fine.
Or even the more twisted moment. What did you think of Ed realizing that it was Nina? When she says Edward, big brother. That's a straight up horror movie reveal, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god. What was going through your mind when that happened?
I
didn't even look at you at this moment because I'm like, okay, if I look over and she's angry, this ain't gonna work. What was going through your head at this moment? Because I didn't even see what you were thinking.
I was probably just in shock.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a shocking moment. And I hate to tell you this, but tip of the iceberg for this series. You're going to have a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
So I hope you're ready. Strap yourself in. Because, yeah, you think that was bad.
It was nice just watching Edward pound the guy.
I almost kind of didn't want him to stop. But Al wanted to keep him sane. And so... and you already kind of brought it up at the end, but Shao does get his comeuppance. As they basically set up a new arc for the what I like to call the Scar arc. Basically, it's a man who's murdering alchemists left and right. And the only way that they know him is through a scar on his forehead, so they call him Scar. And he comes in and he's basically like, God's judgment is upon you. He kills Shao, but he also mercifully kills Nina. What do you think of that? Do you think that was an act of mercy, or do you think he shouldn't have done that? Because again, big debate here.
I think that's kind of hard to decide because it's like, well, even if he didn't kill her, what are the odds of being able to reverse what he...
They already say it's irreversible.
So would she even be happy living like that?
Probably not. She could live a life. This is one of the things I also have an issue with Brotherhood as compared to 03. I promise I'll stop once we get into later episodes. They also kind of make it sound like in 03 that she's in constant pain because of the merging of the two bodies. And so at that point, to me, that is like the ultimate mercy. Because like if you're living every second of every day in utter agonizing pain, to me it's a service to end your life, kind of thing. And that I don't say that lightly.
Yeah.
But this one, they don't really paint it that way. They just say like, well, it's just irreversible. So she's a dog girl forever. And I think this series would have benefited by saying like she is in lots of pain. And one of the ways they say that is, like she constantly says, it hurts. It hurts. And instead, they re-aimed it towards daddy won't stop hurting kind of thing. And I kind of wish that they'd done the it hurts, because that would have been such a justification to just end that poor girl's life.
And just, she's like sad because her daddy's dead. And
Yeah, and instead they should have just said like it hurts, which is what the original. I believe it's the manga line too. It hurts. And so at that point, it makes it sound like she is in constant pain. And so to me, it's a mercy to end her life in that regard. And I don't fault Scar for that one. I fault Scar for a lot of his kills, but I do not fault Scar for this one. That is probably the only act of mercy I'll give him. Because I can't imagine living that way. Like I've tried every time I've watched the series, like living your life as a dog girl the rest of your. How do you even do it? How do you even do it? Because you could even tell, like, she had a very limited brain capacity. Like, she was not the talkative little girl that she was before. You could tell that there was, yeah, she wasn't the same.
Well, the last Chimera is like, she just said, all I want to die. Or,
oh yeah, that's right. She does say, I want to die, in Brotherhood. And she says that in 03 too. It's like, okay, yeah, that's, it's kind of hard to argue that, right? Like, I mean, you've taken the oath, do no harm, but what do you do in a situation like that? Do you, I'm asking you seriously and honestly, like, do you side with her?
Side with who?
Side with Nina. Like, I want to die. Do you side with her, or do you argue?
She doesn't say that. It was the last one. The last.
Oh yeah, that's right. No, it was the mom.
The mom,
where she said, "I want to die." So at that point, but again in 03, Nina also says that.
Oh, I don't know.
So
that. Well,
yeah,
I wouldn't have not known that.
Yeah, so that's why I'm kind of giving that concept. Wouldn't that have changed the picture a little bit for you? Yeah. I want to die. Mm-hmm. Because like you're an RN, so like do no harm, all that stuff. Like, what do you think of the whole quandary here? Is it right to end her life at this point?
Well, you wouldn't want to keep them alive if they don't want to.
For me, the big thing is if she's living in constant pain, then that's not life. Mm-hmm. That's not. When you take that out, like part of my brain just wants to say like maybe you could live something of a life. It wouldn't be much, but I'd almost say like, you have the right to live it. But that's why I say like you should have put in it hurts, because that would have explained like you're in constant pain and nobody wants to prolong that. Mm-hmm. Nobody does. And it's a tough episode. It's got a lot of tough things that you have to think about. So it's hard to be able to do it, but any good moments out of this? All the moments with Nina and the boys. Because that's all you can take away from it. I will also give credit to the beginning of the episode where you see Scar go up against the Ironheart Alchemist Bosgron, I think is what his name is. That was actually a really good fight and showcases Bosgron a little bit better than the 03 one. In the 03 one, they just make him out to be like a higher up. He's just a general. So you could tell like he's got a high kill count or whatever, and that's what's gotten him his rank. But here you got to see what he could do, and it was kind of frightening. Like he could create weapons out of the very ground. So I'll also give credit to that. That was a good fight between the two of them. Out of 5, where would you put the what was it called? The An Alchemist Anguish. That was the episode's name.
I don't know.
4.5. Because it did what it needed to do.
Yeah, I'd probably go with that too.
Because, like, this isn't supposed to be a happy episode. It's not constructed that way. But it kind of, like, given what I know later, it is kind of a good prep point to get you into this is what you're looking forward to kind of thing, because things are going to get darker from here and twisted from here, and Shao is only the tip of the fucking iceberg. So it is actually, in my opinion, if you can't deal with this episode, you can't deal with this series, like, because it goes deeper than that. So I guess the question that I want to ask right here now, do you want to continue after seeing that? no one would fault you for saying no.
Well, if I've dealt with a lot of crazy things in Inuyasha, I'm pretty sure I can deal with whatever.
All right. So we'll see what happens. So let's go into the last episode that we covered here, which is episode 5, Reign of Sorrows. The whole premise of this episode is basically it's an aftermath episode to Shao Tucker, where everybody is just kind of coping with the whole deal of Shao's going to go to jail, and Nina's going to have to live some kind of existence because they don't know yet that Scar has come in and murdered them both. In fact, when you start things off at the beginning of the episode, Ed and Al find out from Riza that they're both dead. And so at that point, it becomes a huge manhunt for Scar, who at this point has 10 alchemist kills. And so, like legit serial killer. He has to be stopped. And the whole premise here is just we have to find Scar. We have to confront him. We have to take him down. And spoilers, they don't. But if you expected them to take him down 5 episodes in, then why the fuck are you watching the series?
Mm-hmm.
I also kind of want to throw in like bad moments in these episodes if we can. Like if we actually have a means to be able to do it. This was one of those episodes where I would say a bad moment is making fun of Roy Mustang during this. It was not a good episode to bring up that he's useless in the rain, okay? Because this would have been an episode to be able to bring up that he's still an excellent commander. Because this episode, you're not, especially given the subject matter you've just had to deal with, you're not in a humorous mood. And a lot of this is actually more of an action-y episode aside from that. And I just think that was the wrong way to go about it. This was not a time to bring up that Roy is useless in the rain. I think in all honesty, there are better ways to be able to do it. So that is a bad moment to me. Can you think of any other bad moments in it?
No, not really.
Would you agree with me on that one?
It would be just inconvenient about not.
Okay, so you like the scene. Okay. Yeah, I don't. And it's just because, like, given the tone of this episode, I don't think it fits. There's a time to do comedy and there's time to not. And this was one of those where I'm like, no. Obviously, I would say one of the highlights here was Fullmetal and Scar. Being able to see that fight, because this is basically... in wrestling terms, this is a squash match where both brothers get wasted by Scar. Like Al's missing half his body and Ed loses
his arm.
Yeah, it was his arm. He still had both legs. I was trying to think if he lost his leg too. Yeah, he just lost his arm. And so, but at that point, we also get to see a side of Ed that we haven't really seen before. Like, when Scar gets ready to end him, as long as he doesn't kill off Al, Ed is willing enough to accept his own death. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of weird to see from him because he's been fighting for life for so long. So much so that I agree with Al when he beat the crap out of him and said, "Don't you dare do that." Oh, that's a great moment, in my opinion. The only time where there should have been humor in this episode is when his arm falls off. He's like, "Great, and now my arm's falling off." Sorry. But that's a great moment, right? Because in the middle of that tantrum, yeah, it makes sense that Al would get mad about that. What did you think of that fight?
Like the whole fight in general?
Yeah, the fight between Scar and Ed and Al.
That was probably nail-biting at points in time.
Was it hard to watch? Was it hard to watch the heroes lose?
Well, you expect them to lose sometimes, but...
in order to make a great hero, sometimes they have to lose.
Well, yeah.
And this was a huge loss, a debilitating loss. Mm-hmm. Because, like... They don't really hint at it in this episode, but they will in later ones. We actually do have something to worry about with Al. You remember that tattoo that's in his armor, right? It's where his soul is anchored. Mm-hmm. What do you think would happen if that tattoo is destroyed or washed out or... any of that. Have you considered that?
And his soul would probably be lost.
He'd probably be dead permanently. Like, there's nothing you could do at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watched half of his armor just get disintegrated.
Mm-hmm. That was scary.
Yeah, just a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, wow, if it had only gone up a couple more inches, you would have had something serious to worry about. What did you think of Scar?
He was an interesting character.
Would you consider him a threat?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Would you consider him a justifiable threat? Because let me explain this really quick. So Scar has a backstory here. He is from I don't want to say it's its own country, but it's an area of Amestris called Ishval. And they hint that years ago, the state alchemists as well as the military were sent in to quell riots that had erupted in Ishval. And the state alchemists came in and they decimated the place. They even show like Boss Gron being one of them and him just destroying Ishval, along with Roy Mustang was in there too. So he was part of that conflict. And now they're basically looking at an adversary that kind of has justifiable hatred against them.
I mean, that's kind of understandable if
like, once you find out the motivations for Scar, like why he kills state alchemists, you kind of understand.
I mean, yeah, because, it's just like, well, I guess you could say he had justifiable means, but was it the right thing to do?
To him, it was.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make it right or wrong.
No.
It's just to him it is.
But to kind of treat it like he's some messenger of God,
yeah, like he kind of adopts this whole I have been sent from because the people in Ishval worship Ishvala, and he's like, I'm brought here by God to be able to exact his vengeance, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, there's problems with that, and I actually think Scar is one of the good examples of that kind of a villain, because he not only has that justifiable rage, but given his upbringing, it makes sense for him, because like if he grew up in the basic way to be able to look at Ishval in this series is that it's basically like, and it even now it's a bad comparison, it's like he's an Arab, it's like he's Arabic, so he has a very strong belief in Allah, and all of that, and so at that point, like, it's not a good comparison because there are differences between Ishvalans and actual Arabs, but that's kind of how it's painted. Is like, you desecrated his entire people, and now he seeks God's vengeance for your genocide.
Well, yeah, because it just kind of seems like, well, if you have your own God you worship, and so you're acting upon that person just to get vengeance for what happened to your people, that's one thing. But if they all worship the same person, but it's like, it doesn't make any sense why you're going out and attacking and acting.
It kind of makes you wonder if there actually was an Ishvalan that still is saying like, well, Ishvala wouldn't want us to kill, kind of thing, but he kind of sees it another way.
Well, yeah, because he'd be like, well, this is for destroying our homes and our people and stuff.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I kind of don't like in portrayals of religious zealots as villains, because like this kind of just fundamentally goes against what I honestly believe. Like, I'm Christian, and I believe that I have a loving Heavenly Father, but one of the things that I embrace about him is that I don't think an all-powerful God would want people to die, like, especially if he created us in his image, kind of thing. He would want us to live through life. And so I even have this kind of fundamental problem with the Muslim faith, is I just can't get behind a God that would tell us to murder. And so at that point, like, that's kind of the argument that I have here is what if there is an Ishvalan that would preach peace, and he at that point it's more personal vengeance than anything else, because you're using God as a facade to justify you wanting to kill people. kind of thing. And so, like, it's not like I can't see the cracks in the character. But I will say, as far as other characters, Scar is so much better portrayed in this. Not just for the premise here, but also for its flaws. And I hope that you'll see that later on, because Scar actually is kind of a pivotal character in this. And Scar does actually go through a bit of an arc in this. So I like Scar. But anything else you want to point out that stood out to you in this episode? No, I don't. I think this is actually one of the, you were saying how protective Mace Hughes is. This is probably the perfect example of seeing that, because if I remember correctly, he kind of chastises Roy for putting the Elrick brothers in harm's way.
Well, I love it. He just kind of pops in there and says, I'm here. What did I miss, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, where were you to come and help with it? And it's like,
right.
Well, I'm not like an alchemist, so I can't do it.
I actually do like that moment because, again, 03 kind of painted him as a badass, but there's a logical fallacy to the badass. Can you really fight against things that are throwing fire at you? And so I actually do like that moment with Maze, like, dude, you guys are throwing fire. I can't do that. And so he's like, wow, that actually kind of makes sense. He would want to be like the guy in the back of the line, just issuing orders. So I like that bit of mortality from Maze. It makes sense. So I guess at that point, again, one of my favorite moments is Al chastising Edward, just because it's such a raw moment. Like, at any point, either one of them could have been lost, except when it comes to Al, like, that's no hope, because he does not have the knowledge that Ed does.
And it's just interesting that, you could kind of see that Al and Ed had no chance against Scars because they were not in their right set of mind to be able to take someone down after what happened.
But they didn't really have a choice, because one of the things I like about the beginning of this episode is Maze comes in and explains Scar to Mustang and explains how all state alchemists basically have an armed escort at this point, except for the Elricks, because they're out lamenting Nina's death. So it's like, it's actually a good Roy moment. It's like, oh no. And immediately, like, you could see, even though it cuts to Ed and Al, he's like, immediately get a military detail. They have to find the Elric brothers right now, because they are the only ones that are unprotected. That's why they got into a confrontation with Scar, because they weren't protected. And he came across them and he went, oh yeah, you're the Fullmetal Alchemist, prepare to die. I like how that was set up, because it just kind of shows, like, yeah, these are kids. Even though they're flinging fire around, they're still kids, and they're going up against an adult man who can destroy them, who has, more strength than them, more speed. They don't even know how he's killing people at that given moment, so you know nothing about your opponent. So I like that moment. Out of 5, what would you put Reign of Sorrows?
I want to say 5 of those.
Because basically what this is like, it's wrapping up the Shao Tucker storyline and introducing Scar as this threat. So you'd say 5 out of 5. This was well done in execution. Pretty much. Okay. I'd probably go like 4. Just because, like, there are things that they could have fixed. For example, I did not like that Roy was still a comedic element here. We didn't need to mention that he's useless in the rain. We could have just said, like, screw, like, I still would have been happy if, like, he still tried to do it, but he's so out of sorts because he's trying to find the Elrics that he just forgot he can't make a spark. But don't make it a comedic element. Just like, oh crap, get in there right now. You gotta go find him. And Reese is like, you gotta calm down, sir, because you are useless in the rain, kind of thing. Because then it would have shown Roy caring for the kids. So that takes it down a peg for me, as well as some of Ed's arrogance in trying to take on Scar the way he did, as well as his naivete. This is an episode where a lot of that shows, and it's hard to watch. But yeah, that's 5.
Armstrong or what's it?
That was actually a good fight between them.
Fight between those two.
It was a good old fight of fisticuffs between them. And here's the thing: even though we're making fun of Alex does get good moments in this series, and this is kind of one of them where he's getting into a knockdown drag out fight between Scar and him, and it does look pretty good, especially when like things are looking like he's gonna get killed, and he immediately steps back. He's like, "Nope, I've learned." I like that concept, but. Yeah, that's all 5 episodes. So I guess the one question that I want to ask here is, are you going to continue with the series, Andrea?
Yes, I already said I was going to.
Even though the rabbit hole is going to get a lot deeper?
Yep.
What would you consider out of the 5 to be the best episode?
Probably the last one.
Reign of Sorrows. I'm just to say another episode, I'm going to say an Alchemist Anguish, because that Shao Tucker episode is just, it's twisted in all the right ways. It is a horror episode, and it's meant to be. Is there a worst episode in here? I'd probably hand it to Fullmetal Alchemist, just because I don't like the idea of starting with filler.
Well, yeah. Well, it just seems out of place. I probably would have just started with I mean, you could use it, but I think it would have been better just to start with the second episode as the first, because
I agree with you.
I think still would have fit better.
All right. And that's going to go ahead and do it for this episode of Geek News Marathon Night. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you guys will join us for the next episode. We hope you guys have also enjoyed on the RSS feed as well as YouTube and any other place this shows up. If you guys want to continue to support this podcast, make sure to subscribe to the RSS feed at geekynro.libsyn.com. That is the best place to be able to reach out and be able to get this, because I believe as of right now, that is where this episode will show up first. So make sure to support that as well as support the YouTube channel so you guys can check that out. But in the meantime, that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Thank you guys so much for listening in, and we will see you guys when we have taken on even more episodes of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Until then, we have no catchphrase. See you next time.